Did you know that the beloved family film Hocus Pocus was actually based on the real-life murder and torture that affected more than 200 people in the late 1690s? Do I have your attention? The Salem Witch Trials of the 1600s claimed the lives of many men and women who were accused of sorcery or otherwise dabbling in the dark arts. Any form of taboo behavior or even seduction was seen as potentially sorcery. And you know what? Disney made a beloved family comedy out of it that you and I and just about everyone we know enjoy nearly every Halloween.
What happened?
But what if I told you that the real story isn't exactly a cozy popcorn movie that you watch with your kids, but instead a dark and violent rampage that had nothing to do with charming black cats or goofy talking zombies?
Buck-tooth, mop-rind, firefly from hell!
In today's episode, we're going to talk about the real Salem Witch Trials and how the story compares to the 90s nostalgia bomb that is Hocus Pocus. And also, I have information about how Sarah Jessica Parker might actually be linked to the Salem Witch Trials of the 1600s, which is also kind of interesting. Let's get into it.
Step on it, Max!
So, for those of you who somehow don't know, Hocus Pocus is the story of the Sanderson sisters, a coven of sibling witches that are burned at the stake in the late 1600s after being accused of witchcraft. At which point, the town turns their home into a museum of the macabre, which would showcase all of the witchy practices that they were doing. Then, hundreds of years later, a new Salem transplant called Max, a virgin high school kid, which actually turns out to be important, he lights the black flame candle in their museum, which brings them back to life for one night on Halloween to capture the souls of the town's children and remain young forever. So, right off the bat, Disney paints these women as actual witches that were indeed practicing witchcraft and did dabble in the dark arts. This, of course, makes it easier for us to root against them, as it does seem like they do harbor some sort of ill intent towards the town. But in real life, none of this was actually proven at all. The movie's Sanderson sisters are actually loosely based off of a group of real-life sisters called the Town Sisters, who were accused of witchcraft by the town of Topsfield, Massachusetts, and used as a catalyst for the entire witch trials. See, while Hocus Pocus may need to rely on the sisters being witches in order for the film's story to work, in the real story, the conviction of these women was much more complicated.
Let's go.
Oh, come on, it's just a bunch of hocus pocus.
So, where did this all start, and what made the town so dead set on convincing themselves that these women were practicing black magic? Well, would you believe me if I said that this all started the same way that most conflicts started in the late 1600s, over a farm property dispute? I'm realizing now that doesn't sound as sexy out loud as it does in the script. The town family lived in Topsfield, which bordered on what was then known as Salem Village. The farm was located right next door to a respected Salem family, the Putnams. While the two families could never agree on where one farm property stopped and the other began, it hardly seemed like witchcraft. But the Putnams always had negative things to say about the towns, and this is what sparked the initial conflict.
Listen to them not!
Over time, the Putnams would openly accuse the town family of being evil witches with an agenda to gain the trust of the locals. And seeing as before these claims, the sisters were a well-respected religious family, it became easy to see their status as threatening if they were indeed up to something. By the spring of 1692, fear was spreading like wildfire through Salem Village. Whispers of witchcraft had already claimed neighbors, friends, and strangers alike, and soon it would touch the lives of three sisters known as the Town family.
I want you to meet the little woman.
He has a little woman.
Rebecca was the oldest, 71 years old, frail, and almost deaf. To everyone in Topsfield and Salem, she was known for her kindness, her unwavering devotion to God, and her calm presence. If ever there was a woman that would be above suspicion, it was Rebecca. Yet, in March that year, a now historic group of witnesses to witchcraft known as the Afflicted Girls began to convulse in the town's meeting house during a town hall, crying out that Rebecca's specter, or ghost, was tormenting them. And this is one of the earliest recorded instances of a so-called possession, which is kind of cool. But basically, the afflicted girls claimed that Rebecca was spawning demons and ghosts from beyond the grave to torment and haunt them.
Oh, dude.
Old grudges stirred quickly. The Putnams, who had continued to quarrel with the town family over land, pressed charges. Despite dozens signing a petition in Rebecca's defense, Rebecca was brought to trial. And at first, even the judges hesitated. But when one of the girls screamed that Rebecca's ghost pinched her in an open court, the tides all turned. And on July 19th, 1692, Rebecca was hanged on Gallows Hill. But her death, sadly, did not end the accusations.
A rotten apple quickly infects its neighbor, and we want no more like thee.
Only weeks later, Mary, another of the town's sisters, was accused, and like Rebecca, Mary was admired for her involvement in the church. She was arrested, then briefly released when the court doubted the charges, but the afflicted girls came back and renewed their claims, which resulted in Mary getting arrested again, but this time with greater fury from the court, insisting that her spirit tortured the afflicted girls at night. Mary was taken back to jail, and this time, there would be no escape. Interestingly, before her execution, Mary wrote a petition to the judges begging not for her own life, but that they end the shedding of innocent blood. But then, on September 22nd of 1692, Mary was also hanged to death. Now, the youngest sister, Sarah, also fell under suspicion around the same time. And the reason she was accused, or what the town would call her crime, was that she would walk out of church openly criticizing the preacher for speaking ill of her dead sisters and basically calling them witches and helping spread and perpetuate this rumor that these women were evil. So just by speaking up for her dead sisters, Sarah was also accused of witchcraft. She was not just accused, but imprisoned. But unlike Rebecca and Mary, Sarah survived. The madness and hysteria ended before her trial, which resulted in the word kind of dying down and them just letting her go. And folks, these aren't the only cases of stuff like this happening in those days. This was the Puritan era, where over 200 men and women were accused of these types of practices. And out of that 200, 19 were hanged to death, one man was pressed or squashed to death, and at least 10 more died in prison of either starvation or bacterial infections suffered from wounds they were given during daily beatings. And that was just in 1692 alone, not to mention any hysteria that trickled over into the next year. Now, obviously nobody wants to watch that movie with their 6-year-old child on Halloween, right? Right?
How much candy have you had, honey?
Mom, I haven't OD'd. I haven't even had a piece.
So, of course, the general vibe of this story had to be changed in order to turn it into a movie that audiences would want to watch again and again and again for 30 years. With the movie obviously choosing to frame the sisters as actual witches, and given the fact that the town does in fact have a history of accused witchcraft, we of course have no problem eating it up and believing it every single time. But that starts to affect the real lore of the story. In fact, friend of the show and fellow JoBlo employee Taylor James Johnson recently went on a Salem Witch Trial tour, and according to him, 80% of the tour was just the guide saying they filmed a scene from Hocus Pocus here, or they shot something from Hocus Pocus over there, and the real history becomes diluted by the novelty.
And what is that, dude?
Now, I also mentioned that Sarah Jessica Parker may potentially be linked to the actual Salem Witch Trials, which is actually true and an incredible coincidence. It was discovered sometime during the production of the film, through the research that Sarah Jessica Parker had done for the role, that she is a descendant of Esther Elwell, who was also accused of witchcraft during the Salem Witch Trials, but survived because the court dissolved her before execution could be carried out. Close call, and incredibly spooky. And the similarities between the real events and the film only became more distant from each other with the recent release of Hocus Pocus 2, which gave audiences an insight to the origin story of the witches, and we learned that they were never respected figures in their town. Or anywhere else, for that matter.
Then I took the Lord's name in vain. Twice.
What did you guys think about the sequel? You know, I know a lot of people really hated it. I kind of enjoyed it. I did. I've seen it twice, and I'm not mad at it. Any movie that does an Elton John musical number is gonna win me over one way or another.
Sisters, yeah, the witches are back.
In real life, though, this story is really more akin to something like Robert Eggers' The Witch, or as I call it, The Vavitch. You know, with Thomasin being accused of witchcraft that she isn't doing until Black Phillip, like, makes her a witch for real, and then the whole comparison, I guess, falls apart. Although personally, I also like to revisit The Vavitch every Halloween, so what does that say about me?
I be the witch of the wood.
Liar, liar.
I am.
But honestly, it's just more fun to think about all of this as spooky folklore for the fall season than it is to think about three sisters that were tortured and murdered over some overgrown daisies on their neighbor's lawn.
Get up. Run!
But folks, that is the real life story of the Town Sisters, the closest real life counterpart available to the Sanderson sisters of Hocus Pocus, and their tragic downfall from respected public figures in their community to outcasts who suffered a horrific fate at the hands of the very community that they lived to become part of. I'm sorry, were you having a good day? And if so, did I just ruin it?
We want to live forever, not just until tomorrow.
Let me know what you guys think about all of this in the comments. Of course, like the video if you liked it, subscribe for the best in movie content, and stay safe this Halloween season, because you never know when that sun comes up if you might turn to stone. Thank you for clicking on our video, everybody. If you like what you saw here, please make sure you like the video and subscribe and share with your friends who like this sort of content. JoBlo was created by movie fans for movie fans, and we appreciate your support.